What does it mean to live more with less? I'm Katie Wells, and welcome to the Maximized Minimalist Podcast. If you found yourself caught up in the hamster wheel of modern-day motherhood and want to rewrite the script, congratulations, you're in the right place. I'm here to be your guide and help you take back your motherhood and achieve a simpler, more joy-filled life. Cheers to being a maximized minimalist. Enjoy the show. Feeling overwhelmed by clutter? What if you could reduce your stress and your mess in just 20 minutes a day? I want to personally invite you to my upcoming 14-day Clutter Crusher Challenge starting March 17th. I'll teach you proven frameworks and strategies that will save you so much time, energy, and sanity so you can finally create a home that supports you instead of stressing you out. The best part, you'll start seeing results in just 20 minutes a day, and it's only $17. That's less than $1 a day to completely transform your home. And because you're a podcast listener, you get an exclusive 50% off. Just use the promo code PODCAST at checkout. We start March 17th and spots are limited, so grab yours now and I'll see you inside. You can sign up at the link in the show notes. All right, Emily, welcome back to the Maximized Minimalist Show. I am so excited to have you here today and hang out with you.
I am so excited to be here again. So excited.
So it's been a little bit since we chatted. Well, I would say a couple of years. So for any new listeners, if you want to go back and listen to our last and first episode, it's probably back in 2020 or so. Emily came on and we talked all about how to create confidence. And I think that is, playing into so many different aspects of life, but obviously on a granular perspective, like decluttering, like how do we gain confidence? So there's so many takeaways from that episode. And today we're talking about just a more sustainable approach to fitness, which I feel like is an ongoing struggle for so many of my listeners. And I know I've been on the struggle train when it comes to fitness. But before we dive into the topic at hand, one of my favorite questions I ask all my guests to kick us off. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Okay. If you could magically declutter one thing from your life forever, like no effort required, what would it be?
Oh my goodness. One thing. So one item, not like one area of my household.
You take it as whatever you'd like.
Take it. Okay. Oh my gosh, Katie, that's such a good question. Because my brain's going from okay, there's definitely areas of my house that I wish I could magically declutter. But then there's also things, in my life that I would love to magically declutter. I would say that, this is so tough because even the things in my own life, I'm yeah, but I've learned so much from okay, we're going to go with an area. We're going to keep it simple. Closets. If there is one thing that could just stay decluttered forever, namely my children's closets. Mine stays pretty neat. If their closets could stay decluttered forever, I would be so much happier.
I hear it. With no effort too. That's a nice thing. You don't have to be I wonder if their closet's crazy or cluttered or messy. I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. And I don't have to wonder because I just know. I know. No matter, even if I just, did it yesterday, it is what it is. Maybe I'll send you pictures.
That's fine. Well, sometimes we just need to embrace the mess, right? Mess is different than clutter. Mess we can't avoid. But yeah, send me some pics and let's see what we can do. Yeah. Put some Katie magic on there. So again, your approach to so many things is so aligned. We have this conversation every time we speak, which I love. It's so aligned with what we talk about here on the Maximized Minimalist. And it's about simplicity and sustainability. And so I would love to hear what led you to create really the framework that you're known for, the Stronger framework, and how did your own personal journey shape that?
So there is a short story and a long story. I'm going to go with the short one, and then you let me know if you want more info. But the short version is my husband and I, kind of going all the way back, I just have always been a worker. I've always been a doer, even since I was young. I did not do very well in school, but as soon as I could, got 2 jobs, and then I got 3 jobs, and then I got 4 jobs. And even when we got married, I had 4 jobs. I've always just liked to fill my time with things and be productive. I didn't want a 9 to 5, but I wanted 4 different jobs I could work from 5:30 a.m. until, midnight every night. So I did that for so many years. And then shortly after we got married, we started our first business, which was a gym. There's so many stories there too. It was an amazing experience. We grew really quickly. We had a lot of success. And of course, I loved it because we were so busy. Then I had my son, and it was the first time I was oh shoot, what do I do? Because I'm dedicated fully to this. I'm literally working from morning till night. And now I have this child who I love and I actually want to spend time with. So I did what we all do. And I just, struggled with mom guilt real heavy for years and years. fast forward, we opened a second gym. We had another business on the side. Like things were kind of getting crazy. After that, we ended up kind of feeling like everything we did turned to gold, and it wasn't like a prideful thing, but it really did. It was like we would start a business, it would be successful. So we were like, oh, what if we go online? Then we'll have all this extra time. We can like grow really fast. It'll work out super great. Well, that was the first time we realized like, oh, this is actually really hard. And so we actually sold to, both of our brick and mortar businesses, went online, realized it was a lot harder than we thought it was going to be, a lot slower. And I thought I hustled before. That's when I really dove in. And I had no balance in my life. I was just hustling and striving, and like everything every guru would tell me to do, I was like, yes, I'll do that. That doesn't feel aligned at all. But okay, if you're telling me I have to do that for this to be successful, I'll do all the things. And I was stretched so thin, and I was kind of becoming a shell of myself. So fast forward too many years, Katie, it takes me too long to learn lessons sometimes, but maybe it's for the benefit of other people. I finally got to a tipping point, and I'm a Christian, and I was sitting in my kitchen one day, and I literally almost audibly heard the word rest. And I was like, that's hilarious. That's so funny. That's not me. Okay, whatever. I just honestly thought it was funny. And then it just kept settling into my heart. And I remember being like, okay, fine. What is even rest? And knowing that I wasn't created to sit on my hands, and in my head, rest was vacation, it was sitting, it was relaxing. And so I'm like, okay, maybe there's something to this. And the more I dove in, the more I understood that rest is actually not an absence of work. It's working with intention, with the absence of anxiety and worry and striving and trying to white knuckle all the outcomes. So that is where this all started. I started being like, hold on a second. So you're saying I can work with intention and, really focus on the things I can control, but let go of the things I can't control. I can release this hold because my hands are cramping, I can let this go and still be productive. So that, again, there's so much there that led to this whole process. But out of that, over the next year, I really felt like it was time to kind of put my money where my mouth was and step back from everything, which was so difficult. It was so hard because, as I said, my identity is real wrapped up in what I'm doing and what I'm producing. So I was homeschooling my 3 kids at the time already, but I just felt like I needed to completely separate myself from this doer mindset and this doer identity. And so I took a whole year off of everything except for being a mom, staying home, and homeschooling my kids. So needless to say, it was a very challenging, but so healthy opportunity for me to really put action to that word. And what does rest look like? What I discovered is that year was probably one of the most productive years of my life. It was also super necessary for me. And I'm just going to say this. I don't think everybody needs to take a year off work to find this. Hopefully, I can be that for you and you can just continue and learn these lessons without having to learn them the hard way. But through that came this really beautiful framework that taught me how to surrender and trust the outcomes. I don't have to worry about those things, but then also continue to steward what was on my plate. In this case, it was my family, homeschooling my boys, my home, things like that. So that kind of brings us to where the framework came in. And since then, I apply it to literally every area of my life. And just starting back in November, decided to start, okay, it's time. It's time now to put this back in front of people. It's time to teach this. And it's really been pretty life-changing for a lot of people.
Wow, there's so many nuggets in there. So first thing I'm going to repeat, your year. And again, it doesn't have to look like a year for everyone. So, I'm like, okay, so how can I integrate this into my life? First of all, we'll dive more into the framework, which I'm excited to learn more about. But that year you took off being a busybody or whatever we want to call it, kind of staying in your default setting, which is how much more can I get done on my checklist? How can I keep going? How can I push myself? How can I grow? Whatever it is. A lot of people who are really obsessed with self-development, I feel like that can be a rabbit hole. That could probably be a whole other episode, but that was your most productive year.
Yes.
Right. And I think so many of us need to understand and almost declutter the belief that rest is lazy. And there's a whole nuance, again, another episode of why a lot of us are programmed this way. But wow. And even just hearing you say that is just such a great reminder for me. I too, similar to you, it's our identities get wrapped up in our careers, in our material possessions, in our trophies, our successes, our failures even. And so to be able to go, hold on, I don't actually need to believe this anymore. So I want to dive more into this framework and really what you uncovered in this, because it sounds really just incredible.
Yeah, I am going to dive into that. But I want to just say, I love that you brought the personal growth stuff into this, because that, and I didn't even mention this, that was a huge part of those years. And that's why I was listening to all these gurus, because they had it all figured out. Guys, they don't. You know, Katie and I have been in rooms where we are around people who really look from the outside like they have it all together. And, you know, I don't mean this in a condescending way, but you have conversations with with these people, and you start to realize like, things are usually not as they seem. That is also something I decluttered. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I pretty much stopped listening to podcasts and reading personal development books. I actually started reading fiction. I started baking sourdough. I mean, random stuff.
Where this is going.
It's so random. But like, I started to realize like, oh my gosh, I am so much more than personal growth and it's amazing. So I'm so glad you brought that into this, because that is such a lie. It really, I mean, there's so many good things out there, but it is such a lie that we need to be constantly consuming these things. And it hurts a lot of people more than it helps them.
Yes. Like I have to become, I think, again, it's like finding the balance and harmony between like, yes, I still want to grow and maybe challenge some default settings and get closer to my values and all those things. But like sometimes we get like, oh, I need to be like this person in order to achieve what she's sharing. She's achieved and she's teaching me. And you're right. Like, especially in that space, it's a rabbit hole where you're like, oh, this podcast, I'm listening to 18 different podcasts and 18 books on like confidence or self-esteem or becoming a business owner. And it's like, it's overwhelming. And it sounds like what I'm hearing is it took you further away from, first of all, you knew in your heart it wasn't a lot of this advice you were following wasn't really the right fit, but it was just taking you down the trajectory of further away from the life you actually, when you took time to rest and slow down. And the other purpose I think for learning serves for a lot of us is almost no different than social media or like binge watching Netflix. In some sense, it's a distraction, right? It is a distraction. And I have fallen into like, I don't want to feel these feelings, so I online shop, right? And then the next iteration of myself was, I don't want to feel these feelings. I'm stressed. I'm feeling anxious. So I'm going to listen to a podcast on how to be a better me, right?
That's it. That is so it. And that's one big thing during this last year that I would be like, I'd catch that like urge, that need for dopamine. And I'd be like, whoa, nope, we're just going to sit here. We're just going to sit here and like process through this. But yeah, you're right. That is a whole other episode, but I'm glad you brought that into it. I think it's super important just to be aware of. Okay. The framework. Do you want me to type it?
Yes.
Okay. It's the word stronger, and it is an acronym. And I was like, why is this so perfect? It could not have come out better. So here's how it starts. The S stands for surrender. S and T go together, surrender and trust. And of course, like I said, I could spend probably 8 hours talking about this, so I won't do that. But the S and the T is really about all of the things you can't control. So like whatever you're dealing with, are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to get healthy? Are you trying to build a business? Well, there are parts of that you set your scale in the direction of your goals, but you can't control if the scale moves. You can control only what you do. So the surrender and the trust is you're surrendering the outcomes that you can't control, that we like to try to white knuckle and pretend that we have some control over, even though we don't, because that's what anxiety and worry comes from. So trust is a two-parter though. It's not only trusting that the outcomes are going to be whatever they're meant to be, but it's also being trustworthy. And I think a lot of people miss this because they're like, well, I surrendered the outcome, and so now I'm just waiting for it to happen. Nope, that's not how it works. And this, for people like us who love to do stuff, this is like, yes, okay, here's where I get to do stuff. The being trustworthy piece is you're being a good steward of what's on your plate. So again, for me right now, that's my home, that's my husband, that's my kids, that's homeschooling them, and it's my business. Those are the things that are on my plate. And so I'm going to do them as excellently and as well as I can in the moment that I'm in. And I'm going to let tomorrow take care of itself. And of course, this is a cycle that you go through. Like you're like, I surrender the outcome. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, why am I stressed? Oh, because I'm trying to force an outcome again. Okay, release that again. What do I need to do right now to do everything I can to point to that outcome, knowing that I can't control it? It's something that it's like working a muscle. It requires time and repetition to like master that. Have I mastered it? No. But do I do it literally like 100 times a day? Yes, I do. And then when you've done that, the S and the T, the R is rest. So you surrender, you trust, you're trustworthy with what you need to do. And now you get to rest because the work of your hands is done without the stress and the anxiety and the worry and the fear and all the things. So those three things all by themselves ourselves would probably, that would have changed my life. That's how it started. But then as we continue, it just all kind of compounds and it becomes a cycle that we go through. So after so now you're hopefully in this restful state and you're working diligently, but without anxiety and worry. You move into O, and O stands for observant. So for me, again, as a Christian and a believer, I am observant I want to hear the voice of God. I'm looking for where are you speaking to me? But it's also a two-parter because the other part of it is being willing to hold up the mirror, being able to look in the mirror and be like, okay, what is going really well? What are my strengths? Where are my areas of need? And I always like to think about this as thinking of yourself rightly. And I think this is something that we tend to be on one end of the extreme or the other. People either tend to think too highly of themselves, and sometimes that's just a cover, or we think the opposite of that is thinking too lowly of ourselves. And that's probably where most people land. So, there's a verse in Romans, it's Romans 12:2, and it talks about be sober minded. And I think people are like, oh, it says, don't think too highly of yourself. Instead, think of yourself with a sober mind. And people are like, oh, that means that I'm just supposed to think lowly of myself. And that's not true. So being able to own your strengths, be confident in who you were created to be, and also confident enough to recognize your weaknesses and be willing and able to grow in them. Because as you continue to grow, and this is kind of where that piece comes in, right? It's not throwing spaghetti at the wall of personal development and hoping something sticks. It's oh, I'm struggling with jealousy. This is something I'm going to work on. I don't have to feel bad. I don't have to beat myself up over it, but this is something I'm going to struggle, I'm struggling with. This is what I need to work through rather than this random approach to growth. The O, then we move into the N. And that stands for nourished. And that's nourished mind, body, and spirit. And this is kind of where this new phase of what I'm doing with my business comes in, because I realized, fitness is super important. Mindset is super important, but it is all of the things together. And we've talked about, or I've talked a lot about detoxing, not just your body, but your mind, your life. Decluttering your life. You've got to think through, who are your influences? Who are you listening to? What TV shows are you watching? What podcasts are you listening to? All of those things. So when I say nourishment, I'm talking about, yes, the actual food that you're putting in your body. Is it nourishing you? Is it giving you energy? Is it helping you to show up in your life the way you want to show up? Those are all important questions. But also, how are you nourishing your mind? How are you nourishing your spirit? So it's so much bigger than just nutrition and food. So that leads us to the G, which stands for grateful. Of course, something that we all know about, we hear about all the time. But again, I think when gratitude hits on the end of all of these, when you have fully surrendered your outcomes, you've trusted, you're being trustworthy, you are working from a place of rest, you're being observant to the things that you're good at, the things you're not good at, the lessons you need to learn, and you're actually nourishing your mind, body, and spirit in a healthy way, gratitude hits real different. It's a whole different, it doesn't feel forced. It feels genuine. You feel grateful from a place of I actually have a right mind of what I can and what I can't control. So it's just totally different. That then leads to the E, which is energized. It's kind of the kind of energy that you don't get from coffee or sleep. Sleep is so important, don't get me wrong. But this is I don't even know how to describe it other than just, when you have a zest, an energy for life. It's a purpose. That's what that means. And then of course, actual energy too, which is going to happen when you're nourishing your body and sleeping and doing all the things. And then lastly, the word R stands for resolved or resilient. So the way I look at that is, I know through all the many ups and downs in my life that muscle is built through struggle. And that's really what that's there for. You are going to go through this framework and you're going to mess it up and you're going to make mistakes and you're going to find yourself stuck in the S and the T for a long time in some things. And that's all okay. You cannot be resilient if you never fall. People who never fall and have an easy life are not resilient. They just kind of got lucky. So if you want resilience, that's what's required. And I think it shifts your mindset. It makes it a little bit more exciting when you do kind of fall on your face and okay, something good's going to come out of this. So that's it in a nutshell. Again, it's a whole 8-hour or longer course.
Oh my gosh. Well, thanks for the crash. I have so many notes. I think there's so many pieces of this that are so fruitful. And I think, again, the idea of this framework isn't do this framework and it's unicorns and rainbows. A lot of us are promised with all these self-development, here's what, made me $8 billion in 2 days. Just follow these 4 steps. Or here's what made me happy. And, it's okay, no, sometimes we have to fumble our way through it. So a lot of these stood out to me for a nuance of reasons, but I want to hit on energize because I think for a few different reasons. I recently read a quote that said something like, power plants don't just have energy out of nowhere. They they source energy and maximize it and like generate energy and send it out to others, like send it out to other places. And I was like, so it was about us generating energy for ourselves. And I know it's easier said than done, especially depending on what season of life we're in. But one thing, ever since I heard that, it was maybe about a month ago, I'm like, how can I generate energy for myself? And really nothing, I didn't change anything. Like obviously, so I took it as like fueling my body, right? Nourishing my mind, body, and spirit are ways to generate energy. I walk with a weighted vest. All these different things, work out, nourish, all the things. But it just hits a little bit different when I have the intention in the back of my mind, like I'm also generating energy so that I can output that energy into the people and things that matter the most in my life. It's similar to like when I do Pilates, the woman I learned from on the app, she's like, put your brain in your muscles. She's like, I know you feel it in your glutes, but put your brain in your like whatever, outer thighs. And I'm like, oh, I feel it now. Literally, that's all I had to do was think about it. And yes. So there's like so many nuggets here.
Yeah. And I think, it's Brendan Burchard who said that, because I heard that years ago and it totally stuck with me too. And I actually, one of probably my most controversial pieces of content I ever put out on the internet that I got so much slack for was on that topic. And it was like energy. I forget the title I used, but that's what it was about. It was like, yes, sleep helps. Yes, all those things help. But even if you're in a season of life where you can't dedicate to those things, you can still create energy. I mean, of course, it's your thoughts, it's your actions. But again, like when I am going through my day, I mean, it's amazing. I could get the exact same amount of sleep, fuel my body the same way, do the same exercise. If I'm coming at it from a place of controlling the things that I have no business controlling, I'm going to feel moody. I'm going to feel tired. I'm going to feel, and not even like physically tired, like mentally and emotionally tired, which then becomes physical tiredness. Versus when I have recognized what I can't control and I'm only looking at like the 2 or 3 things that I can actually control that day and doing them well, suddenly I feel like I lost 30 pounds. Like I'm just like, whoo, okay, I feel lighter and I feel energized. And yes, I mean, that is just it. I think that we forget how much we get to, especially as moms, anybody listening that's a mom, we really contribute more than I want to admit to the atmosphere of our homes. You know that. And I think we all know that. And that is not meant to make you feel guilt or shame. We all have contributed in a negative way and a positive way. But I think that it's again, and this is going back to that, think of yourself with a sober mind. Don't go, oh yeah, I'm contributing to this and it's been really negative and it's really bad and I'm the worst and I suck. Nothing changes when you come at it with shame, blame, and judgment. Nothing will change. You'll just feel worse. The atmosphere will continue. Like you're better than that. You are stronger than that. So you're going to stop and you're going to go, okay, I can't control my kids. I can't control what they do or say, but I can control how I show up. And if you have to repair and fix it moment to moment, and like I have been there, my kids are home literally 24/7, like I'm there almost every day, then you do that. But that's why we look at it rightly, not with shame, blame, and judgment, but also not like, it's probably fine, it'll work out. Like, no, let's look at it for what it is and how can we improve? How can we move forward? But you will be, so amazed by just those little letting go of the things you can't control, what that will do for your energy. You will feel like you just drank a Red Bull, but you won't be jittery. Super great.
Or like how we all feel when we drop our donations off at the donation center. We're like, yes, I feel 10 pounds lighter.
Yeah, especially after it's been in your car for like 6 months.
That's right. Not naming any names or anything.
Not me. I've never done that.
I mean, So goes to say, obviously, like moving our physical bodies, doing all these things, but like generating energy through our physical environment and decluttering and simplifying is such a big piece to the puzzle. All right. So now my question for you is like, this framework is incredible. I'm going to keep looking at this, as I just go through my day, because I think there's so many takeaways, but like, what does this look like on a tangible day-to-day level? And even like specifically relating to exercise and sustainability for all my listeners out there who I think, and maybe I'll dovetail into this piece of the puzzle, the trustworthiness. I feel like, again, we're past the new year, like new me. I don't do that, but a lot of people do, right? The cultural pressure to like be a different person in order to be happier. But we're also in a phase in the season here where so many people have stopped exercising, right? Because the willpower motivation fizzled out. I think trustworthiness works on both sides of the coin. When we are consistent, when we show up, when we're able to, we gain trustworthiness in ourselves. And when we commit to goals in the new year and fizzle out for whatever reason, life, it creates this trustworthiness. Like, I'm not trustworthy. I can't do this. And so where do we start if we're in a season where, first of all, it's like, how do I even fit fitness into my life in a sustainable fashion? And for those who've maybe tried, and I don't want to say tried and failed, but that's what it feels like, internally.
Well, first of all, you are not alone. That's why pretty much everyone comes to me. That's typically what they're coming from. I mean, there's a couple things there. Trying to rely on feelings is probably one of the biggest mistakes that we make. It's also the culture that we live in. Like, oh, you don't feel like doing that? You don't have to do that, feeling. But then on the other hand, we're like, feelings aren't facts. But then we're just like, oh, I just really don't feel like doing that, and it's all this conflicting messaging going on in our heads. So on a bare bones, tangible level, and I'm going to just say this is my what's the word? I'm saying the quiet part out loud, that what I teach is not like the sexy, flashy, lose 20 pounds in 6 weeks. Like, it's not that. And I hope that those of you who are listening are over that, because it's been around for too long and we've all seen the high and the low and we've seen the fall of it. And yet we still fall for it because we want those results so bad. And I'm guilty of that for many years as well. So this isn't going to sound flashy and fun, but I think just like how Katie teaches that the things that you do are simple, so simple that they're sustainable. That's why I teach what I teach. And it's why the people that I work with actually get their results to stick for long term, right? And they actually don't even have to think that hard about it, because it is not about motivation. It's not about relying on those things. It's not about an overhaul. It's not about, I'm starting Monday. It's not about macros. It's not about counting calories.
Oh, thank goodness. Keep it coming.
Yes, I will. It's not about hours in the gym. It's not about fitness becoming your entire life. And is there a segment of people who want to go and grow bodybuilder muscles? Yes. And hey, you do that and more power to you. I don't want to do that in my life. I want to be exactly as fit and as healthy and as energetic as I need to be to accomplish the things that I have on my plate. Going back to that T. So I only want to be do I want to look good at the beach? Yes, of course. I'm 39. I want to feel good at the beach, but is that my driver? No. So the two biggest mistakes are relying on motivation and setting physical only goals. Now, I have been in the fitness industry for 20 years. Makes no sense because I'm only 25, but we won't worry about that. I started when I was 5. I cannot tell you the amount of times I would sit down with a client across the table from them and they'd be like, I want to lose 20 pounds because I just gained it and I just feel really gross and I want to fit in my jeans. Okay, cool. Why? And then I would ask them why at least 7 times. Well, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to do that? Maybe on one hand, I can tell you the number of people or the number of times somebody didn't cry. And I've sat in hundreds of these meetings because all of a sudden they're like, oh, I actually want this because I have no energy. I'm in a bad mood all the time. I'm not showing up as the mom I want to show up as. I don't feel sexy. I want to feel attracted to there is so much more to this. So when we focus on, I just want to look good for my vacation, well, that's why it's not sustainable, because I know you think you care about that, but you actually don't care about it as much as you think you do. You want to feel good. You want to operate in your life. Do you walk around your house in a bikini all day? I don't think so, but you do have to take care of your kids. You do have to take care of your home. You do have to go to work. You have to do, I don't know how much percentage of our life are we wearing a bikini? 0.01, you know what I mean? And yet that's what we say our goal is. So those are the two things. Motivation isn't it. Second is physical goals are not it. So what I always teach people is we rely on consistency through discipline. And let me just say, I am the least naturally disciplined person you will ever meet. I'm a Enneagram 7. I want to have fun. I love to wake up and be like, what's on the plate today? That is just my natural tendency. But I have learned that true freedom comes from discipline. And actually, the years of my life that I tried to just lead with freedom, I was so stressed out and so anxious and never could fit things in that I wanted to fit in. Now, I actually am super disciplined, which if 10 years ago me could see me now, she wouldn't believe it. And because of that, I'm able to do these things. So that's the first thing, is consistency through discipline. But then the second part, of course, having a deeper why, knowing what you really want beyond the initial physical goal. And then after that, it's not about, like I said, overhauls. It's what are the seemingly insignificant changes that you can make today and repeat consistently over time that is going to be like the biggest domino. And that's why, even though I do, fitness and mindset coaching, we start with the body because it is the biggest domino. When you feel better, you suddenly start going, okay, if I could do that, what else can I do? Maybe I could write that book I was dreaming about. Maybe I could start that podcast. Maybe I could, go for that promotion in my career. And that happens. And I've seen it happen so many times. So that's what, again, not the sexy answer you want, but like, what is the one thing that you can do today and repeat consistently over time for at least a month, and then start to add a second thing and then a third thing?
I love this. Okay. So my takeaways are, again, consistency with discipline. I love that. And I think so many of us, and this was me, I got so hung up on thinking that consistency meant being perfect. So if I said, okay, my goal this week is to work out 4 days. If I only did 3, I would stay in the shame judgment cycle for the next 3 months and not work out, because I'm like, well, I'm not consistent, right? I was doing exactly what we talked about earlier. I was like, I can't trust myself. I'm not consistent. I'm just not a consistent person. I struggle with habits, right? Identity drives behavior, and that works on both sides of the coin. And so I love that. And so the identity piece, consistency with discipline, which also means like taking action. And I think what's important for, at least for past Katie to hear, and hopefully this will be helpful for my listeners, right, is we're all in different seasons of life. My consistency looked different when I had 2 kids under 2 than it does now when they're 8 and 9 years old. And so giving ourselves grace and compassion and permission to just make it realistic for where we are, because people might go, oh, what's Emily do for workout? What's Katie do for workout? Well, it looks a heck of a lot different than it did for a nuance of reasons. And so I personally always like to tell my audience, not from a fitness perspective, but from like a goal setting perspective, like what is realistic? So have a plan A, plan B. What's the plan A for your ideal week, right? We go into Monday going, here's what the week looks like. Then Tuesday hits and your kids have the flu. So how do we just avoid stopping altogether, losing momentum, losing motivation, getting into that shame judgment cycle? So what does that look like on a fitness scale? So my plan A is like, I commit to my workouts, whatever. 4 a week is still my goal right now. Maybe next month it's 5, I don't know. And then if I can't do a full workout, Emily, I'm not even kidding you. If I'm like, I'm going to start this 40-minute workout, I'll do half of it. And that is so hard, because my brain's like, you're a failure. You can't even do 40 minutes. Think about all the internal stuff we're battling. That's like, I get it when you're saying like, there's so much happening between the ears.
Yes.
And then it's like, what's the point? All the stuff. But being able to challenge those thoughts and go, you know what? I still did 20 minutes. Like that was my plan B for my survival day. Or maybe back then, years ago, it was like, I'm doing air squats while I'm potty training my kid, like that in the bathroom. That's what it looked like.
Yes.
Versus this all or nothing mentality. And I think too, going back to, sometimes we need to declutter the belief in order to take action, right? When I had kids, before kids, you and I have talked about this. Like I was super CrossFit. CrossFit was like my life. I was on the CrossFit train. This is my favorite way to work out. I felt good. All the things. This is how we do it. CrossFit. And then River was born and I was like, I'm not driving to the gym. Okay. So because I couldn't exercise in the way I wanted to with my community in the gym, I didn't do anything for a long time. And then I wondered why I didn't feel good. I wasn't generating energy. And I really wished I would have decluttered the belief that exercise had to look a certain way. And I think we constantly need to be challenging some of these beliefs that form, because as we get older, exercise might need to look different because of joint pain or weight gain or weight loss, all these different things. And what worked and became a belief 5 years ago, maybe you need to challenge that again and say, listen, I'm in a really tough season with work and all these things. Maybe I need to, shift it even more. Do you find that that's helpful for a lot of your clients too?
You basically like explained exactly what I teach that you're living out. And there's 2 things. One is, and this is I can't think of his name, but another popular personal development, John something. Anyway, he always says motions precede emotions. And so what I would say is like, yes, the decluttering of the belief is so important, but sometimes it actually happens through motion, like do the thing. But that doesn't mean doing a 40-minute workout. That means, and this is what I tell my people, when you cannot do the full thing, which by the way, like the workouts that I provide are like under 30 minutes, because I realize how, hard it is in these seasons of life. But if you can't do the whole thing, commit to 2 minutes. Now, is 2 minutes going to help you lose 50 pounds? Probably not over the long haul, but what it does do, and what I teach them is this is called a placeholder, because you have to kind of mess with your mind sometimes. We have to sort of trick our minds, right? And you know this. So a placeholder, all it does is it tells your mind, even in the midst of a busy season, movement is important to me. I'm going to make time, even 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes to move my body because it's that important. And I know how good I feel after. And the reality is, and you would know this too, I mean, if you move for 5 minutes, you're going to feel better than you did if you didn't do anything. And so it's attaching that dopamine response to movement. It's starting to make it normal. And I like to call it a placeholder because it holds the place for movement for when you have more time in a season and a bigger, a more open season. And it's one of those things where people are like, yeah, but if I don't do the full thing, I'm not getting. That's not the point here anymore. You know what I mean? The point is, and that's when we go back to our why. Is it about the 20 pounds on the beach, or is it about showing up as the mom you want, having energy? Well, guess what? The 5 minutes will actually get you a step closer to that. Not doing anything and then beating yourself up, that's going to take you like 10 steps farther back. So I would say those two things together, in terms of motion, just 2 to 5 minutes, and you will start to rewire that belief just by doing it. But it doesn't have to be a huge commitment. I love that you're already doing that anyway.
Yes, it makes the biggest difference. But as someone who, again, always struggled with all or nothing, it looks this way, or what's the point? It's easier said than done. But again, it was like, I still did the 20 minutes or sometimes 5 minutes. Like, I'm not kidding you. Sometimes I'll start even a 20-minute workout and be like, you know what? 5 minutes, I'm good. And to be able to walk away from that knowing that, yeah, it might not get me closer to a lower number or a higher number, whatever. But I love the concept of a placeholder. Like, it's keeping me consistent. It's keeping me accountable. And it's casting a vote for the person I want to be. And that is someone who shows up. And yes, again, we all have seasons. We need to give ourselves grace. But I had a client, for example, I'll never forget. She said to start making exercise a habit, every time she went to use the restroom and sit down, she did like 10 air squats. That's it. And again, a lot of us go, well, what's the point? That's not going to, just like you said. And she goes, Katie, it's changed my life on so many levels. Like, it's so profound. And so I think overcoming some of this cultural messaging or even this innate messaging a lot of us have is important. But I love that you're like, yes, we need to declutter the belief and also cast that vote through motion, through taking action.
Yeah. And also when you do that, like, we can't quantify, there probably is a way, I don't know, hopefully they'll figure this out someday, but we can't quantify what that actually does for the rest of our day. If you don't do that, that will create a spiral and it's going to lead you somewhere, probably binge watching Netflix with a bag of chips on the couch because you're going to feel bad about yourself. If you take just the 5 minutes of movement, it's kind of like if you give a mouse a cookie, you're probably going to make a better choice at lunch that day. And if you make a better choice at lunch, you're probably going to feel better. You feel better, you're probably going to act more the way you want to act with your kids later that day. And you might even go to bed earlier and then all of a sudden, look, you have time the next day for a full workout. Like, I don't think we can measure the compound effect of that and what it actually spirals into one way or the other. I think you probably could if you really were paying attention to, like, what did I do yesterday when I made this choice? And wow, look at what I'm doing today after just 2 to 5 minutes of movement. It's really life-changing. It really, truly is. It's more profound than it seems, for sure.
Oh my gosh, so many elements. I could talk to you all day about this. So for women listening who might feel stuck when it comes to kind of the mind, body, spirit, or specifically, I know we're talking a lot about fitness. Like, what kind of support have you found? You've been doing this for 20 years. So you started when you were 5, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. What have you found makes the biggest difference for them on top of all the, wisdom you shared with us so far?
It's not going to shock you when I tell you mindset. Early on in my fitness career, so full transparency, I was in my late teens. Actually, I was 18 when I got started in the fitness industry, but I was 22 when we opened our gym and I had all these clients come in. They were, boot campers and they all wanted to lose weight and all this stuff. And it did not take me long to realize that the biggest challenge for them was in their mind. And so even though I was in my early 20s and most of my clients were in their 40s and 50s, I very quickly became more of a life coach. So yes, they came and they were doing workouts, but it was and I remember feeling so out of my league. Like, what business do I have? I'm 22, giving them this guidance. But I knew enough through my own experience and having struggled and, all of that to know, what did I do to get away from this almost borderline eating disorder type patterns to living truly fit fit and free, like not having to think about my food, not having to obsess over it, all that stuff. And so I was like, I know just enough to teach them. And so I would just rely on that. And I would just help them with those small mindset shifts. And when I saw the impact, I mean, it changed my whole life. It's why I eventually went into mindset coaching, because it really created lasting change. And so now, thankfully, after so many years of experience, we lead with that. So they get the tools that are super simple and easy to sustain. But I have a whole section called Nourish Your Mind. And that's the piece that's transformative. Because the reality is, like, are my workouts and my meal plans like the end all? No, they're just convenient and simple. Like, that was the only goal with those. Are there other ones that will work? Yes, pretty much everything will work if you'll do it, if you stick to it. But the other piece is really the missing piece. And it's all about, how do you eat without feeling obsessive? How do you actually experience food freedom? Like, we all talk about it. How can I actually get results but not count calories and macros? Like, how can I learn? I feel like I can, if I listen to my body, I would want 5 chocolate donuts every night. That's actually not true, but that's what we think. So it's all about like how to get in tune with yourself. What do you really want? Where does motivation come? All of that stuff. We address all of that. And that's really where the gold is. And then the rest of it is just so much easier to plug in because it becomes a lifestyle. I just had a client the other day and she was like, Emily, it's seriously changed my life, because she goes, for the first time in my life, I can go somewhere and I'm not like obsessing over what's on the food table or overthinking it. And she's like, I'm actually like choosing not to have dessert, not because I can't, but because I think about it and I realize I don't even want it because I want to feel really good. I mean, just things like that. And then because of that, it's making her go like, where else have I just kind of done what I thought I was supposed to do? And she's starting to think outside the box. And that's like the coolest part, when they go, okay, if I can master this, literally what else in my life could I do?
What else is possible? And I think too, setting someone on the right trajectory. And we all need that. We all need that remembrance. We all need that coaching. And so your membership, which I think you're talking about here, can you share, like, how do my listeners get it? And I know you have like the different elements of it. So mind, body, spirit.
Yeah. So there's a success path that basically starts with body and just getting getting that all out of the way, but not in the traditional sense, not by just following certain specific workouts, though I do provide those, but more just kind of how do we knock over this domino so it's not a thing? And anybody who's ever done a diet, like, what are you thinking about the whole time you're on a diet?
All the foods you can't eat.
Yes. All the foods you can't eat. When
the diet's over.
How exactly. Obsessing over the weight, the scale, like that's what we think about. And that's exactly the opposite of what we are doing in phase 1. And then as we go, we continue through like building your backbone. So that's something I feel so strongly about, we didn't get to touch on, but everything we do, we always say, make it stronger, because, we're applying the framework to everything. But once we get the body piece just in a way that you can sustain, and whether it's through placeholders or through full workouts, it doesn't matter, as long as you're like making that progress. Then we move into build your backbone, which is just like, okay, where are you wishy-washy? Where do you need to strengthen and firm up your backbone so that you can really walk through your life with confidence? And then it kind of continues on through, we deal with like mindset and emotions, and then ends with, okay, what's next? Like, what is the dream? Like, what are the things that I never even allowed myself to think about because all of this other clutter was in my way and I couldn't see it? And honestly, like, I assume most people are going to be like me. We're just going to continue back through that cycle because, once you get to the top of a mountain, and, I say that very tongue in cheek, you start going, where's the next mountain, right? Your lid lifts. Now you have new opportunities. And so, what's the next level of fitness? What's the next? And we just continue moving through that. Did that answer your question, Katie?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Sign me up. Okay. So I know you're going to get me the link. That'll be in the show notes for my listeners. I think it sounds amazing. I love how you've simplified it enough to a framework that can be applied towards all these like big pieces of our lives, right? And it creates this domino effect. Obviously, since I first met you, I'm like, Emily is amazing. I love Emily. Like you are so great with your words. You're a great coach. And I really feel like, speaking to what you shared, like God put you here, like, he gave you that time, that window. All these different frameworks you shared with us, and these elements are so profound. And even if, like, for my listeners out there who are just like, oh, I can't even remember what the O stands for, like, pick the one, because we all had at least one of your words here that stood out, and go, okay, if I put intention into trusting myself or nourishing my body this week, what does that look like in this season for me, right? Like, that's it. That can be like the one takeaway. And of course, the membership's available as well. So I'll put that link in the show notes. I am so stoked actually to check that out myself because it's all connected. And I think it's almost sometimes a disservice for us to be served like, here's your exercise. And all we do is exercise and focus on that granular. Again, it serves a purpose, but I think zooming out a bit can be really fruitful for putting us on the right trajectory and the sustainability piece, right? Like you talked about. So one last question I'd love to ask, unless there's anything else you want to share on anything we talked about.
The only thing I'll say is I just want to because I know so many of us struggle with anxiety. So if you're feeling that, even if the only thing you remember is the STR, if that's all you take away, surrender, trust, rest. Surrender, trust, be trustworthy, and rest. That alone, like my husband tells me, he's like, I literally went through the STR like 4 times today. Surrender the outcomes, trust that it'll work out, and what can you do? What's on your plate to do right now? Like those 3 things, all of a sudden you just feel a spirit of rest. So I would encourage that because we don't have to go through life so stressed and so anxious and striving. Like we just don't have to. And I would love to see more women get free of that. So I just wanted to kind of put an exclamation point at the end of the ST and the R.
STR. I'll remember that. Thank you. Okay. So as we wrap up, one thing I love to ask all my guests is, what is the one thing in your home you would never let go of and why?
Okay. The first item are the things that were left to me from my grandma. Actually, one is a ring that my mom had bought for her when she was in Israel, and she wore it all the time. So when I see it, I think of her, I wear it on the same finger, just things like that. Certain little mementos. I mean, I didn't keep everything that she ever had, but I have maybe 4 or 5 things that remind me of her. She was excellent in the kitchen. So they're kitchen items or the ring, things like that. Those are the things I would never let go of.
Oh, that's so sweet. It makes my heart warm. And I think we can all relate to that feeling. And I love how you also shared the sentiment about kind of not keeping everything, because a lot of people can get hung up on that. But what you've done is you've curated the most meaningful things to you. And it sounds like you've integrated them into your life. And I think that is really where the rubber, the magic happens when it comes to these sentimental things, is they're really fulfilling a deep purpose when we are reminded of the memory or the person. So really, really beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Well, Emily, thanks for helping us become stronger with purpose. I love this acronym, and I have this on my notepad. I'm going to continue to look at it, and I can't wait to hear what my listeners think. So again, all my listeners, go check out Emily's membership. Remember the STR pieces, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Katie.